I thought growing a new life would bring us closer. I did not know it would be the thing that showed me how far apart we already were. My name is Lily. I am 29, and for most of my marriage, I believed love looked like preparation. Budget spreadsheets for the nursery, lists taped to the fridge, a calendar with doctor appointments marked in green and tiny hearts drawn next to them. I believed in the kind of care you can see. When the test turned positive, I cried in the bathroom with both hands over my mouth. The joy felt so big it scared me. I walked into the kitchen with the little stick wrapped in a paper towel like it was a fragile treasure. My husband, Aaron, was making coffee. He turned, saw my face, and his expression changed from sleepy to stunned. He took the test like it might burn him, and then he laughed, this breathless sound, and pulled me in so tight I could hear his heart. We told our parents 2 weeks later with cupcakes that had pink and blue sprinkles. We spoke in new sentences. First trimester, due date, prenatal, vitamins. He rubbed my shoulders when the nausea hit and texted me reminders to drink water. He bought a body pillow that looked ridiculous on our bed and called it the worm. At night, he pressed his palm against my stomach like he was greeting a person waiting behind a door. Aaron works in logistics, tight schedules, deliveries that must land when they land or the whole day falls apart. I run a small floral studio that smells like eucalyptus and damp cardboard in the mornings. We are practical people. We believe in doing the next right task until the big things take care of themselves. The first doctor appointment felt like stepping into a new continent. The nurse took my blood pressure. The midwife asked about my family history. Aaron squeezed my hand and nodded like a student trying to earn an A. When we heard the heartbeat, he went very still. Afterward, he stood in the parking lot, blinking at the sky like a man who had just seen a comet. For a while, everything felt like a gentle movie. We made a registry with sleepy lambs and soft sheets. He assembled a crib and insisted on reading the instructions out loud like it was a sacred text. We walked after dinner and argued in a friendly way about names. I wanted something simple and strong. He liked names that sounded like sunshine. Then the fatigue hit me like a wave. I went to bed early and woke up tired. The nausea came back for an encore. I stopped wanting coffee. I stopped wanting conversation. I moved slower through a world that kept its speed. Aaron started picking up more at work. That was how he put it. They need me this quarter. I'll be home a little later than usual. It sounded reasonable. It sounded temporary. He missed one appointment because a truck broke down on the interstate. He missed another because a client call went long. He apologized both times, kissed my forehead, and promised to make the next one. I believed him because I wanted to, because I remembered the way he looked at the sky after the heartbeat. Little things began to shift. He put a passcode on his phone that I had never seen before. He started showering at odd times. He bought a new cologne that did not smell like him. If I asked about anything, he smiled and said stress, and then he changed the subject to the stroller we still needed to choose. One night I woke to the sound of our front door clicking shut. The clock said 1:17. I sat up, called his name, and no one answered. He came back 20 minutes later smelling like cold air and something sweet. He said he had been clearing his head. He kissed my cheek and said, "Go back to sleep." I put my hand on my belly and told the baby a story about a lighthouse. I left out the part where the lights sometimes blinked off. I told myself pregnancy makes you paranoid. Hormones. Exhaustion. A mind that wants certainty in a season that offers mystery. I decided to be kinder to myself and to him. I made soup. I folded tiny onesies on the couch and cried because they looked too small to fit any person, let alone the person who already felt so large inside me. At our 18-week scan, the technician asked if we wanted to know the same. Aaron texted that he was stuck on a dock with a delayed shipment and begged me to FaceTime him later for the reveal. I said we would wait. The technician smiled and said you can come back. I went home with a photo that looked like clouds and shadow. He came home with apologies and takeout. We tried to laugh about it, and for an hour we did. My best friend, Noor, asked me gently if I was okay. She said I seemed thin at the edges. I told her I was just tired. She said tired is temporary, and I said I know. She offered to come to the next appointment with me. I said yes because the idea of not walking into that room alone felt like a gift. The truth is, I loved Aaron. I loved the boy he had been when we met and the man he was learning to be. I loved his careful hands and his serious frown when he tried to swaddle a practice doll at the hospital class. I loved the life we had built out of lists and laughter. I did not want to believe there was a crack forming under it. But cracks have a way of growing in the dark. And the night he told me he had to travel for a 2-day site visit just happened to be the night I felt the baby kick for the first time. I texted him too quickly, and he replied with a confetti emoji and a promise to call later. He did not call. I lay there with my hand on my belly, feeling flutters like a secret, and understood that joy can be a lonely room if the person you invited does not show up. I did not know it yet, but the next weeks would teach me a cruel lesson. Some people prepare for a baby by building a nest. Some prepare by building a distraction, and some, if you let them carry on with someone else while you carry a child. The first real sign came in whispers, not from Aaron, but from the way the world around him shifted. He used to leave his work bag in the hallway. Now, he carried it straight to the bedroom and zipped it shut before going to shower. He used to toss his phone on the couch while we watched TV. Now it stayed face down, never out of reach. At first, I told myself it was just stress, that his company was cracking down on leaks, that new policies required more discretion. But the truth was simpler. He was hiding something. I noticed changes in his schedule, meetings at odd hours, site visits that required overnight stays. He explained them with a kind of weary patience, as if I were a child asking why the sky was blue. He would say things like, "It's complicated or you wouldn't understand." I wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at me, and it was easier to nod than to fight. Pregnancy has a way of silencing you. Your body is already busy fighting its own battles. There were other things too. He came home with receipts in his pockets, restaurants we had never visited together, bars I had never heard of. When I asked, he said they were work dinners, nothing personal. But the names of the places sounded personal. Trendy spots that people recommended for dates, not supply chain meetings. I caught scents that did not belong to us. A faint perfume clinging to his collar. Sweet, powdery, unfamiliar. He claimed it was from hugging a coworker's wife at a retirement party. The explanation landed heavy and awkward, like a coin tossed onto wet ground. I wanted to believe him, but my chest tightened in protest. One evening, I decided to press gently. I asked if he was nervous about the baby. His eyes flickered. He laughed too quickly. Of course not. I can't wait. His hand rested on my belly, but it felt staged, like an actor remembering his lines. I leaned into the touch anyway, desperate to believe it still meant something. Friends started to notice. Noor, my best friend, mentioned casually that Aaron seemed distracted. She said he looked through people instead of at them, like his mind was always elsewhere. I brushed it off, but inside I knew she was right. He had become a man living in two places, and I only occupied one of them. Then came the missed milestones. He skipped our birthing class, claiming a truck accident kept him at the office. He missed another ultrasound, sending flowers to the clinic instead. The card said, "Sorry I can't be there. Love you both." The flowers were beautiful, but they were also a reminder that he was absent when I needed him most. I placed them on the kitchen counter and stared at them until the petals wilted. Nights grew longer. He would leave the house after dinner, saying he had to check on a shipment. Sometimes he came back near midnight, smelling faintly of beer. I asked if he had been drinking. He said he had stopped for one with the guys. Which guys? I wanted to ask. Instead, I nodded and turned toward the wall. My belly shifted as the baby moved, as if reminding me that someone else was listening, even in silence. The lies grew thin around the edges. One Saturday, Aaron claimed he had to work overtime. I called the office line to ask if I could bring him dinner. The receptionist hesitated before saying he wasn't in. She sounded confused, like she thought he was out of town. My chest went cold. I hung up and sat in the kitchen, staring at the clock until the minute hand blurred. When he came home hours later, I asked how work was. He said, "Exhausting." I smiled tightly and said, "I bet." He never noticed the tremor in my voice. My doctor recommended I avoid stress to protect the baby, so I swallowed my doubts like bitter pills. I wrote them in a notebook instead of saying them out loud. Questions like, why does he smell different? Why does he guard his phone? Why do his stories change? I filled page after page, but never confronted him directly. It was easier to bleed into paper than to risk breaking what was left of us. Still, deep down, I knew you do not need to catch every lie to recognize a pattern. The absences formed their own map. The late nights, the guarded phone, the laughter that never reached me anymore, it all pointed in one direction, towards someone else. The hardest part was the baby. Each kick reminded me that I was not alone, that my body was building a person who would rely on me completely. But each kick also reminded me that Aaron should have been there, feeling those moments with me, storing them like treasure. Instead, I felt them in silence, clutching my belly while he was out somewhere else, giving pieces of himself to another woman. I told myself to wait, to gather proof, to survive the pregnancy first, to focus on the life inside me instead of the man drifting further away. But the truth has a way of showing itself when you least expect it. And the night I finally saw the reality with my own eyes was not the night I was looking for it. It was the night it crashed into me like a storm I could not escape. The night it happened was ordinary in every way that mattered. Rain tapping against the windows, the fridge humming like a dull drum beat, my belly round beneath my sweatshirt, the baby shifting like a secret I could not contain. Aaron had left after dinner, muttering about a shipment that had gone sideways. He kissed the top of my head, promised to be back before midnight, and disappeared into the dark. Something in me refused to sit still. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was exhaustion twisting into suspicion. I found myself reaching for my keys, sliding my swollen feet into shoes that barely fit, and walking to the car. I told myself I would drive past his office, see the light in his window, and go home reassured. The streets glistened with rain. I turned onto the avenue that led to his building and felt my chest tighten. His car was not there. The lot was nearly empty except for a security guard's sedan. My stomach sank, but my hands kept moving. I turned left instead of right, toward a part of town where the restaurants were newer, shinier, the kind people recommended for anniversaries or flings. I told myself I was being crazy, but then I saw it, his car, parked neatly in front of a boutique hotel, with glowing letters above the awning. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles whitened. I pulled over across the street and sat there, rain streaking down the windshield like tears the sky shed for me. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then the door opened, and he stepped out. My husband, my Aaron, his jacket unbuttoned, his hair damp like he had showered, and beside him, the young woman with the perfume I had smelled on his collar. Her hair gleamed under the streetlight, and she laughed as if the rain was a joke made only for them. I could not breathe. I pressed a hand to my belly, as if shielding the baby from the sight of its father standing there, smiling at someone who was not me. He reached for her hand. She took it. My chest cracked open. I should have driven away. I should have spared myself what came next. But I stayed. I watched them walk inside together, her hand on his arm like it belonged there. The hotel swallowed them whole, and I sat alone in the car with the engine idling, the sound of my heart pounding louder than the rain. Minutes blurred into hours. At some point I turned off the car, leaned against the seat, and let silent sobs shake through me. The baby kicked hard, like a reminder that life goes on even when love falls apart. I whispered, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." I did not know who I was apologizing to, the baby, myself, or the girl I had been before this night. When the hotel doors opened again, it was nearly dawn. Aaron stepped out first, adjusting his collar. Claire followed, her heels clicking softly on the wet pavement. They looked tired, satisfied, unashamed. He leaned in, kissed her cheek, and said something that made her smile. Then they parted ways. He walked to his car. She called a cab. I ducked low in my seat, heart hammering as if he might see me. But he did not look around. He simply got in his car and drove off, heading home to the house where I sat hours earlier, folding tiny onesies and imagining a future that no longer existed. I did not follow him. I stayed in the parking lot until the sky turned pale and the world began to wake. Then I drove home slowly, the streets still slick, my body heavy with a betrayal I could not yet speak aloud. When he came through the door later that morning, he looked startled to see me awake. He smiled too brightly. "Morning, you're up early." I stared at him, at the man who had kissed another woman hours ago and now kissed my forehead like nothing had changed. My hands itched to throw the truth at him, to scream, to shatter the silence, but I stayed quiet. I wanted him to tell me. I wanted to see if he would choose honesty over the lie. He did not. He talked about the shipment, about the rain, about how exhausted he was. I watched his mouth move and heard nothing. Inside, the truth screamed louder than any words could. That was the night the world split in two. Before the hotel, I was a woman waiting for her husband to come home. After, I was a woman carrying his child while he carried on with someone else. And once you see the truth with your own eyes, you cannot unsee it. I waited until the afternoon to say the words out loud. I needed the house to be quiet. I needed the tea kettle to whistle and the windows to breathe and the clock to keep time like it always had. I needed proof that the world would not stop when I told the truth. Aaron sat at the kitchen table with a spreadsheet open on his laptop. He looked up when I walked in, and the sight of him felt surreal. This was the face I had kissed goodnight for years. This was the mouth that had said my name, like a promise. I pulled out the chair across from him and folded my hands so they would not shake. I asked if he had slept. He said barely. I asked if the shipment worked out. he said, just in time. I listened to him choose sentences that kept the air calm. Then I said I saw you at the hotel. Everything in the room changed. The light did not move. The clock did not stop. But something fundamental shifted between us, like a bridge cable snapping in a storm. He blinked the way people blink when an eyelash falls into their eye. He closed the laptop slowly. He started to speak, and then paused, as if reaching for a door that was no longer there. I repeated myself. I said, I saw you with Claire. I said, I saw you walk in together. I said, I waited, and I saw you come out before dawn. I said, I watched you kiss her cheek like she was the one who mattered. He swallowed hard. He kept his eyes on the table. He told me he was sorry. The words were small and terrible. He said it was a mistake. He said it was stress. He said it did not mean anything. I stared at him until he looked up. I asked if it had happened before. He nodded. I asked how many times. He said a few. I asked how long. He whispered, since the 2nd month of my pregnancy. The world tilted. I put my hand on my belly and felt the baby roll like a wave trying to find shore. I stood up and then sat down again. I asked him if he had planned to tell me. He said he had tried to end it. He said he did not know how to stop. He said he loved me and he was ashamed and he could fix it if I let him. I thought of the hotel awning, glowing in the rain. I thought of the way he had come home and talked about shipments while I stood there with his child under my heart. I thought of the first heartbeat and the way he had looked at the sky like a man blessed by something larger than himself. I asked him if he had been careful. He said yes. I nodded and wrote a mental list that began with blood work and ended with a new lock on the front door. He reached for my hand. I pulled it back. I told him to pack a bag, leave for a while. I told him to text me before he came by for anything. I told him to remove his key from his ring and set it on the hook by the door. He opened his mouth to argue and then closed it again. He walked to the bedroom in a daze and came back with a duffel and a face that looked like he had finally met himself in a mirror. When the door shut behind him, I stood in the middle of the kitchen and let the quiet fill every corner. I did not scream. I did not break anything. I boiled water and made oatmeal and ate 3 slow bites because the midwife had warned me that grief can make you forget to feed the life inside you. I texted Neera to come over. She arrives with a cardigan and the kind of silence that feels like safety. We made a plan I would call my doctor for tests. I would call a therapist. I would ask my sister to stay with me for a week. I would give the nursery one small task each day so it did not feel like a room built on quicksand. I would sleep in the guest room for a while. Neera wrote the list out loud so I could hear the verbs call, ask, rest, eat. She taped it to the fridge. I pressed my palm over the paper like it was a lifeline. That evening, Aaron sent a long message. He said he had told Claire it was over. He said he had contacted HR to request a transfer. He said he had booked a motel and he would respect any boundary I set. He said he would go to counseling. He said he would do anything to earn back trust. He ended with, I love you and I love our baby. I put the phone face down and let the words sit there like stones. Claire wrote the next day. She used my name. She said she was sorry. She said she had not meant to hurt me. She said she and Aaron had not planned this. She said they had made a mistake, and then another, and then another. She said if I needed to talk, she would meet me anywhere. I did not reply. I am not a lesson plan for someone else's regret. The doctor drew blood and reminded me I was still healthy. The baby kicked when I lay on my left side. A small miracle kept announcing itself no matter how much the rest of my life folded inward. My therapist said betrayal lights up the nervous system like a house fire and that my job was to get outside and breathe. She gave me homework, drink water, keep a slow routine, find one gentle joy each day. I chose sunlight through the leaves and the feel of clean sheets and the way citrus smells when you pull a peel apart. My sister moved into the guest room with a suitcase and a determination that made me want to weep. We organized the pantry just to remember that messes can be put back in order. We ordered takeout and ate on the floor. We put our hands on my belly when the baby danced. She laughed and said, this kid already likes noodles. Aaron asked to meet. I agreed to 1 hour in a public place with Nur at the far end of the room. He arrived early and held his hat in both hands like a confession. He talked about therapy appointments and transfer paperwork and a new number I could reach if I needed anything. He said he had deleted Claire's contact and blocked her on every platform. He said he could find a new job if that would help. He said he had been a coward and a fool and a man who forgot the difference between attention and love. I told him I would not make any decisions until after the baby came. I told him my priority was stability and health and sleep. I told him he would not be in the delivery room unless I changed my mind. He nodded and cried into his knuckles. People at nearby tables looked away to give us the privacy that politeness pretends to offer. When the hour ended, I stood. He stood too. He asked if he could hug me. I said no. He nodded again and watched me walk away. Nights were the hardest. The bed remembered him. The house remembered him. I moved through rooms that held our echoes and tried to make new ones with small actions that belonged to only me. I folded tiny socks and lined them up in a drawer. I practiced the breathing the nurse taught me. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 6. My body learned the rhythm and my mind tried to follow. People told me stories. A neighbor said her cousin forgave her husband and they were happy again. A coworker said she walked away and never looked back and it was the best choice she ever made. Both stories sounded like postcards from different countries. I did not know yet which country would become my address. Some mornings I awoke with clarity and thought I would file for divorce. Some afternoons I imagined the slow work of rebuilding with strict honesty and sterile boundaries and years of counseling. Some evenings I lay on the rug and felt the baby move and knew that whatever I chose would begin and end with protecting this small person from adult storms they did not ask to weather. On a quiet Wednesday, I opened the nursery closet and found the bag with the cupcakes toppers we had bought before everything broke. I held one between my fingers, a tiny cloud on a toothpick. I laughed because it felt absurd to cry over paper, and then I cried anyway. Grief is not logical. It lives where it wants. Through all of it, a new shape of strength grew in me. Not the loud kind, the simple kind. The kind that writes checklists and keeps appointments and feeds a body that does not want to be fed. The kind that says, I will not abandon myself, even if someone else has already done that job for me. I do not know yet if Aaron and I will become a cautionary tale or a complicated recovery. I know that trust is a thread and ours has been cut in too many places. I know that I can hold a baby and a boundary at the same time. I know that some love survives and changes form, and some love ends because ending is the true thing left to do. For now, I sleep with the phone on silent and the hospital bag half packed. I keep my keys by the door and a list on the fridge. I whisper to the baby about lighthouses and safe harbors. I tell this small person the truth. I am still learning. We are going to be okay. Even if okay looks different than I planned, the weeks blurred into months, measured not by calendars but by the steady rhythm of a growing child inside me. Every kick was both a comfort and a reminder. Comfort, because life was still blooming where love had burned away. Reminder, because the father of this child had chosen someone else while I carried his future. Aaron continued to send updates. He told me about therapy, about how he had stopped drinking, about the transfer he requested at work. He sent photos of the crib he had moved into his rented apartment, as if to prove he was still preparing for fatherhood in his own fractured way. His words always circled back to me. He said he wanted to earn forgiveness. He said he would wait as long as it took. He said he loved me. I answered rarely, and only about logistics. Doctor visits, insurance forms, hospital checklists. The space between us had become a canyon, and shouting across it with words like love or forever felt pointless. What mattered now was stability for the baby. What mattered was that I could stand without leaning on someone who had already dropped me. Labor came early on a rainy night. My sister held my hand through the contractions, her steady voice cutting through the chaos. Aaron arrived just as I was being wheeled into delivery. He begged to come in. I shook my head. My sister stayed with me instead. The baby arrived screaming and perfect, and when they placed that tiny body on my chest, the world rearranged itself in an instant. The betrayal did not vanish, but it shrank in the light of something bigger. Aaron met the baby the next morning. He cried, he whispered apologies, he said thank you like a prayer. I watched him hold our child and wondered if the love he had failed to give me could at least be given here to this small person who deserved nothing but devotion. I do not know what the future holds. Divorce papers sit in a drawer. Counseling appointments wait on a calendar. My heart is still bruised, my trust still broken. But I am no longer only a wife deciding what to do with a husband's betrayal. I am a mother deciding what kind of life my child will inherit. That difference changes everything. Now I leave the question with you. If you were in my place, would you give a man like Aaron another chance for the sake of the child, or would you close that door forever?